what's up? Jared Kanata here. Today's lesson, we're looking at double stops inside of the pentatonic scale. So in this case, we're using an A minor pentatonic scale. You can do this with any pentatonic scale, and you can also do it with any of the different shapes of the pentatonic scale. We're just going to look at shape 1 just to get introduced to the idea. So the key thing here is you got to know the shape of the pentatonic scale. Now once you know that shape, the idea is to, in double stops, have another note paired with each of those notes. So, for example, when we play the first note of the pentatonic scale, in this case A, the note that we're going to pair with it is the closest note on the next string. So in this case, this would be the closest note in the pentatonic scale that's on the next string. This A and this D. So we play them together as a little chord, two notes at the same time. When we get to the pinky note, the second note of the scale, the closest note in the scale on the next string is this third finger spot, or this E at the 7th fret. So we end up with this little chord. So the first two double stops that would happen in the pentatonic scale are those two little chords. And as we go through from that point all the way through to the end, every double stop that we play is either a third interval or a fourth interval. That's not something you have to drive yourself too crazy with just yet, but if you wanted to look into the theory behind it, what's happening when you play this A, for example, if you were to play an A major scale, even though we're not in the key of A major right now, but if we did play an A major scale, that note that we're pairing up with it is note 4 of the A major scale. That's why we would call this a fourth. Over here, that note with the pinky is a C, so if we played a C major scale, we would find that note that's paired with it is the third note, so we call that a third. So don't necessarily need to know that to practice through these ideas, but it doesn't hurt to know it, and every single double stop that we cross in this pentatonic scale will be either a third or a fourth. So continuing on, we had, now when we get to the next note of the scale, now we're down on the A string, we want to do the same thing. We want to grab the closest note on the next string, which would be this one on the D string. So now we have the A string and the D string barred. And then the next note, third finger, the closest note to it on the next string is right there, right below it. So we have another bar. So now we have, and if we keep going, next is the D string. The closest note on the next string is this one, once again right below it. So a lot of these little bars, next note is the third finger on the D string, 7th fret. The closest note on the next string is this one right below it. So we end up with this. And we keep going. G string now, the closest note on the next string is this one, so another bar. Pretty much every first finger spot on the 5th fret is going to be a bar. Now we're back to a slightly different shape. When we get to this note, the closest note in the pentatonic scale on the next string is this note with the pinky. So we end up with this shape. Not that you have to use those fingers. At any point it could be these fingers, these fingers. So depending on what kind of riff you're doing and where you're coming from, you might choose to use one finger over the other. And then the last string would be the B string, tied to this being the closest note on the next string. And then this note, closest note on the next string, it's right there. So if you look at the notation in the tablature that's attached to this video, the exercise there is basically just running up the scale and back down the scale using double stops all the way. So all together you have be double stops all the way up and down the pentatonic scale. And if you map the process out through any of the other 5 shapes, you could do the same thing. So in the demo that I did in the beginning of the video, you might have seen me move around a little bit more. So here and there I was picking and choosing some other shapes, like some of the ideas I used. In this spot, I slid it up a whole step, because that's inside of shape 2 of the pentatonic. Or I did this, because that's inside of shape 2 of the pentatonic. You can take this idea and you can move it down into shape 5 of the pentatonic. I'm pretty sure in the beginning video I also went up here, which is just shape 1 again. It's the same thing here. Right? Second dot after the double dots. So once you get comfortable going up and down through the scale, as if that was the way you would normally play the scale, the idea is to just pick and choose some spots and use the backing track to try and come up with your own interesting riffs. You could hang out in one little spot and see what you can find. For example, maybe just on those 2 sets right there, we see what we can find. Right, maybe I add in the next set. So sample some riffs and see what you can do over the backing track. And as you get more comfortable, one other thing you might want to try is, since we're in the key of A minor, what you could do is you could take an A minor chord, it could be a bar chord, it could be an open chord, and what you could do is kind of jam with yourself. Play a chord and react to the chord, right? You could play A minor, react. That's the idea behind the pentatonic double stops. Give it a shot.